Hello, hello. Hi, everybody. Whoops. Thank you for tuning in again. Another Thursday, another stream. Hard to believe that it's almost already a week that passed. So, yeah, hi, everybody. Hi, everybody in the chat. Hi, everybody who tuned in. Um, yeah, I can already pick up on that question which I see here, how to apply to a job. A question which I guess comes up every week, which I totally understand. It's a tough market, obviously out there, and so I'll repeat what I'll say every week, essentially. Besides the regular stuff, which includes having a good portfolio and so on, um, I think getting a job in this difficult environment right now, more than ever, requires knowing people and being seen by people. And the way to do that, of course, besides maybe going to events or meetups or stuff like that, but you mentioned you want a remote job, so that might not be an option, but it might. But besides that, I think one of the biggest things you can do to stand out from the crowd is build an audience, do something which gives you visibility. Could be a YouTube channel, could be being active on X, could be anything like that. And I say what I always say. I know you don't want to be an influencer, you want to get a job, but I think in this current environment, doing anything which makes you stand out, which gives you more visibility, is unfortunately important, besides the things that always mattered, like having a good portfolio. So that's that. Have I seen Seed Dance 2? I have, and I think it looks pretty cool. I have only played around with it, but I think it's a really cool image model, pretty great capabilities. Or Seed Dance is the video model, right? I saw that too, but I haven't used it for anything yet. Looks promising, but I haven't used it. So what I want to do today in this stream is kind of a mix of things. Last week we had lots of long discussion about AI and stuff, and I know not everybody likes that, but again, it is of course the thing that is important these days, that is rapidly evolving and has a big influence on many things. So today I'll try to mix it up. I got some articles. Maybe you already read it. I haven't. This is an article that got quite a lot of attention. It's quite long. No worries. I will not read it word by word necessarily, but I want to go over this article, share my opinion on it. Probably dive into some reaction articles which I found which look promising. Chat with you. And then, if we got some time left, which I hope, also dive into Svelte, because that is a topic that has come up over and over again. And Svelte is amazing. I've worked a lot with Svelte, I think 3, back in 2019. And since 2020, I have not worked with Svelte anymore. So I want to get back into it, and we can do that too. So that's the plan. And yeah, so let's dive in. And will PHP make a comeback? I don't think it's gone. I think PHP is doing great. It's easy to feel like JavaScript is dominating everything, because clearly with AI, JavaScript is very popular with AI. But that being said, PHP powers the majority of the web, depending on how you look at it. So yeah, I think PHP always was there and will be there and is a great choice. So let me dive into this article now by Matt Schumer. Something big is happening. And it's probably worth pointing out that Matt Schumer, of course, is CEO of some AI companies. So if we search for who is Matt Schumer, which I already did before, we can learn that he's an entrepreneur and investor, invested in AI companies. So we should take that into consideration when we read this article. And yeah, I will also dive into some counter articles. Okay, so something big is happening. Think back to February 2020. If you were paying close attention, you might have noticed a few people talking about a virus spreading overseas, but most of us were paying close attention. Stock market was doing great. Your kids were in school. You were going to restaurants, and so on. If someone told you they were stockpiling toilet paper, you would have thought they'd be spending too much time on a weird corner of the internet. Then, over the course of about 3 weeks, the entire world changed, and I already see where this is going. By the way, as I said, I haven't read this before, but I see where this is going, obviously. So yeah, we didn't see the pandemic coming. But of course, I guess the argument will be it's now the same with AI. I think we're in this seems overblown phase of something much, much bigger than COVID. I've spent 6 years building an AI startup, investing. I live in this world. I'm writing this for people in my life who don't. I keep giving them the polite version because the honest version sounds like I've lost my mind. So yeah, this will probably be a very extreme article telling us that AI is going to end the life as we know it for all of us. That's what I see coming here. The gap between what I've been saying and what is actually happening has gotten far too big. The people I care about deserve to hear what is coming. I should be clear about something up front. Even though I work in AI, I have almost no influence over what's about to happen. Yeah, sure. I mean, that is like a no-brainer, obviously. Even if you were Sam Altman, you wouldn't have control over what is happening because that's just one company and there are more and there's rapid innovation going on in all of them. So yeah, the future is being shaped by a remarkably small number of people, few hundred researchers. Yeah, obviously that is clear. But it's time now. This is happening right now, and I need you to understand it. I know this is real because it happened to be first. So yeah, pretty clear where this article is going to go. And I was already preparing for COVID in December 2019. Well, you were early then, and I know first reports already were out there in late 2019, but I will admit for me, the pandemic, like for I guess most people, really only became a thing, in Germany at least, in like, we had the first cases, I think, in January 2020, and then those were handled. Didn't seem like it necessarily would become a big problem, and then it hit us in February and March. Is it true that Udemy is only paying out 15% to course authors? Depending on where the sale is coming from, yeah, that is true. Yeah, that's awesome. Hallo aus München-Giesing. So Giesing is like a part of Munich. Yeah, my office was there. It was in the Tegernseer Landstraße. Yeah, that's pretty funny. Yeah, so let's continue here. Here's the thing nobody outside of tech quite understands yet. The reason so many people in the industry are sounding the alarm right now is because this has already happened to us. We're not making predictions, we're telling you what already occurred in our own jobs, and we're warning you for what's next. For years, AI had been improving steadily, big jumps here and there. Then in 2025, new techniques for building these models unlocked much faster pace of progress, got even faster. Each new model wasn't just better than the last, it was better by a wider margin. The time between model releases was shorter. I was using AI more and more, going back and forth. So that is the first point where I already kind of disagree. And it's, yeah, let's take a look at that. I've drawn this chart before. I think, or my opinion on this is that, yes, of course, AI models have improved. Like if we were in, let's say, early 2023 here, and then we have like 2024, and so this is like the beginning of 2023, beginning of 2024, beginning of 2025, and now we have the beginning of 2026, right? So if we have this, I would argue that for me, it seems like models, of course, got much better here, got better here, and now they're kind of like flattening out in the sense of it's not stopping. But I think what got much better actually is the tooling around these models. And I've said that before. The tooling around these models, that is, for me, what got much better. And the models, they got much better at following instructions, which kind of gives us this magic thing here where awesome tools with great models that are super good at following instructions, that works really well. And I think that is a lot of the magic we're seeing since a few months. Not saying that models are not getting better, it's just, I think, really the combination that makes the big difference here, which of course nonetheless leads to AI having more and more impact and everything feeling like it's moving faster and faster. Though I will also say, and I use AI, I've said it before, a lot for coding. I use Claude Code and everything, but you can definitely also feel productive without being productive with all these tools. And that is like a dangerous area too. But yeah, so definitely things picked up steam, got much faster, but I don't fully agree with this statement. It's a bit more nuanced, I'd say. February 5th, 2 major AI labs released new models, GPT-5 free codex, which is really great, and Opus 4.6, which is also really great. These are the 2 models I'm using all the time right now. And again, together with the tools in which you use them, Claude Code or the Codex tool, which I really also like, but also, of course, GitHub Copilot, that really works well. Something clicked, not like a light switch, more like moment you realize the water has been rising around you and is now at your chest. And yeah, this is really extreme. And I will say, even with these models, even in tools that are great, it's not like you throw them a random prompt and they magically get it all done. Instead, with good context, with good prompt engineering, you can get great results. And these tools can really help a lot for writing code when developing, and they do for me. But it's not like they suddenly magically do something on their own, which other models wouldn't have done before. It's still about you giving them a plan, you using them correctly. At least that is my experience. If that is totally different for other people, then I'm doing something wrong, but that is my experience at least. If you use tooling, doesn't it suck up even more tokens than using it directly? Well, I don't know what directly means. I mean tools like Codex or Opus or Claude Code. And yeah, of course, those do suck up tokens because they need to expose tools to these models. So yeah, of course, that is more tokens being used than if you were just hitting the API. But you need these tools. You need to tell them how to edit a file or that they can use the edit file tool in order for them to be useful. So I don't think there's a way around that. But of course, you wanna hope that the tools you're using, so Claude Code, for example, are optimized such that they expose their internal tools to the AI in a way that doesn't burn tokens like crazy. Yeah. I still like VS Code and Copilot over Claude, however, giving your course a try. Yeah, VS Code is also great. I'm absolutely not a fan of like these extreme opinions where you say, oh, this one tool and this one model is the best and all the other ones suck. I think more tools and more models are good that some people make you think that there are. But Claude Code, for example, does work really well for me, and I like the features it has built in and so on. So yeah. Anyways, let's continue here. I'm no longer needed for the actual technical work of my job, which kind of means to me that maybe the job wasn't too complex in the first place. I don't know. I describe what I want to build in plain English, and it just appears. And yeah, again, that is what I just meant. This is at least not my experience. I describe what I want in a specific amount of detail, depending on the task. I steer it into a certain direction. I give it some context I find important for the task. And then, yes, I have a good chance of code being produced that works well. And still, all the time, I also review the code, I have it clean up the code, I fix anti-patterns I find in there despite me using skills and trying to come up with good prompts. So yeah, it appears, but it's not like you throw a wake prompt and edit and you suddenly get a result, at least not for me. So I can't relate to this experience here. You can get to that finished experience with these tools, but not because these tools magically do it. At least they don't for me. Maybe I'm using different ones or I'm using them wrong. A couple of months ago, I was going back and forth with AI, guiding it, making edits. Now I just describe the outcome and leave. Yeah, this is way too extreme, I would say. This is essentially vibe coding, and I don't doubt that you can build stuff like this. The question is, which kind of applications, which stuff are you building like this, and can you extend it? Can you maintain it? And so, yeah, not sure about this. Let me give you an example so you can understand. I'll tell the AI I want to build this app. Here's what it should do. Here's roughly what it should look like. Figure out the user flow, the design, all of it. And it does. And yeah, no. Yeah, I don't know. It writes tens of thousands of lines of code. Not that this is necessarily a good metric, by the way. Then, and this is the part that would have been unthinkable a year ago, it opens the app itself. And oh boy, this is, I don't know. So, again, yeah, absolutely. You want to build a feedback loop where the AI can evaluate itself 100%. But this is not some magic. You can literally tell the AI that it should do that. And you want to do that. You want to make sure that you have tests, that the AI writes tests, that you instruct the AI or you add some hard hooks or whatever, that those tests are being executed after major changes. You want to build that feedback loop. That's all in my Claude Code course, by the way, for example, too. You want to have that, but this is not some magic that suddenly works. This is exactly what I meant. Tools and the AI models and how they can use these models now give you that option. And they don't just give you that option now. You were able to do that a couple of weeks or months ago already too, I would say. But yeah, it's not like if you throw a prompt like this at a model, it may do all those things, and it may do all those things in a way that doesn't work, and it may decide to not test the app. You just don't know. You're gambling, and you don't want to gamble. Instead, you want to leverage these tools effectively, and that means reducing the chances of things going wrong or not going the way you want them to go. And by the way, I'll get back to questions and comments in the chat. I'll make sure to not miss any of those. So yeah. So yeah, it can test the app, and that is true. Feedback loops are important. I'm not exaggerating. Yeah, I think you are. This is what my Monday looked like this week. But it was the model that was released last week that shook me the most. And yeah, I'll say GPT 5.3 Codex is really good. A good model, very good at following instructions and gathering helpful context and coming up with good plans. I think that is really is a model that's fine-tuned for those tasks really, really well. Yeah, it was making intelligent decisions. So yeah, we had that all. I've always been early to adopt AI tools, which makes sense since he's a CEO of AI company. The last months have shocked me. The AI labs made a deliberate choice. They focused on making AI great at writing code first. This is true, of course. This is true because, of course, code is an area where large language models really, really excel right now because code is text, which is exactly what large language models generate. Code has clear rules. There's plenty of code to train the models on, and with automated tests and browser use, you can validate the result of the AI model. So, of course, that is a particularly great area for making progress and for achieving impressive results, which is, of course, what these AI companies need because they, of course, need to get funding and everything. So, yeah, I fully agree there that AI companies are, of course, focusing on that. Yeah. If AI, and that is another good point, actually, of course, if you have AI models that are great at writing code, you can, of course, also leverage them to help you with developing future iterations of these AI models or the tools that leverage these AI models. So you can build Claude Code with Claude Code and Opus 4.6, for example. And I'll leave the question aside whether the AI model does it all on its own. Clearly, at this point, it does not. And the question is if we will get to that future where it will. But of course, it can help. So yeah, that makes all sense. I'm just not on board with that very extreme version here, and definitely not right now, I would say. So yeah, I'm just flying over that. They're moving on to everything else. I also heard a podcast this week with Elon Musk and Dwarkesh, I think is the name, right? I don't want to get it wrong. Yeah. Really good podcast where Elon Musk, of course, also shared that by the end of this year, he said he would be surprised if we wouldn't have like a perfect digital agent that can do everything a human can do on a computer. So something like OpenClaw, but doing it all really, really well. And I would add it should probably also have some solutions for the serious security problems OpenClaw and other AI agents have with prompt injections, because otherwise you can't trust that agent and you can't give it all that access it would need to do amazing stuff. So that is what Elon Musk is convinced about or of, and that makes sense because it's Elon Musk and he's been off with timelines before too. But I also think that agents like OpenClaw and these coding agents are already pretty good at certain tasks and will probably get much better. And I can't tell how good they will become, and security will be a serious issue. And then ultimately, of course, for a complete autonomous system, you would need AI that can use these agents and orchestrate these agents and find tasks for them to really like remove the human from the loop. And yeah, I'm not sure. We may get there at some point. I think we're still pretty far away from that right now. At least if I look at the work I do, at the projects I work on. The experience that tech workers have had over the past year of watching AI go from helpful tool to does my job better than I do is the experience everyone else is about to have, law, finance, and so on. Not in 10 years. The people building these systems say 1 to 5 years. So again, I do think AI will have an impact on all these jobs. I agree, on every job that requires a computer. And if you take robotics, probably at some point also outside of that. The big question, and that is what's missing in this article, I think, is this just says, okay, this is going to change, and that means we don't need humans anymore. Essentially, that is the essence I'm getting from this article thus far. Now, you can absolutely discuss if and when we would get to this point. I don't think it's as set in stone as this article says it is. And the even bigger question then maybe is nobody can predict what that will mean for humans. If that means you're out of your job, you're sipping tequilas at a beach, or if that means, well, you will be the one orchestrating these agents and configuring these agents and reviewing the work of these agents. And I don't know what. This is like the paradox thing here. I mean, if you would have told people in the medieval ages about cars, they might have come to the conclusion that that is pretty bad for the people operating horse carriages, but maybe they wouldn't have been able to make the conclusion of which advantages cars and automobiles bring. So I think imagining what's next is, of course, always much harder than imagining what you may be losing, if that kind of makes sense. Now, before I'll continue, I'll try to catch up here in the chat. Max, I watch all the courses of React and I built some project with it and a great course. Thanks, but I have 6-month build project with React, but using AI a lot and I forgot a lot. Is that normal? Yeah, I mean, with AI in general, it's normal that you forget a lot or don't understand a lot about the code you're working on, and that can or cannot be a problem. I think it's a huge problem if you don't know the technology you're working with very well, because that way you're also not learning it, and that will really only work out if you think that you don't need to learn it because AI will do it all anyways, and you don't need to understand the underlying code. if you think, which I think you should understand the result you're getting and you should understand the code, then you still might want to use AI, of course, but you want to make sure you pause from time to time to understand the code it gave you, maybe write some code from scratch, maybe dive into the docs from time to time or take a course or whatever, and catch up with that so that you got an understanding of what's happening. And by the way, I read also all the nice comments. Thank you all so much for that. Codex is 100% better than Opus, but sometimes it makes acoustic decisions. Opus seems more stable, but worse. I mean, yeah, I also had different experiences with these models, and my feeling is, but that could be wrong, that Codex 5.3 is much better at, or can be better, not much better, but can be better at planning, thinking things through, whereas Opus sometimes starts editing quicker and then might make poor decisions, but overall, they're both great models that work great in the tools in which you're using them. And I had good results no matter if I tried it with GitHub Copilot, in Claude Code, or in the Codex app. I think really all these tools with their models can give you good results. AI ruined the Next.js Tailwind and Prisma stack. Now it's a sign of AI slop. That is just so true, yeah. There definitely are certain stacks, certain choices, certain looks like shared CN, which unfortunately have that smell of being AI, yeah. Which, of course, again, does not mean that these are bad technologies, just as using AI for coding is not bad, in my opinion. But the border between useful tool and using its advantages and using it to generate slop, that is, of course, a very narrow border, and it's easy to drift into one of the different in the other camp. But I tried AI and it wasn't that good. Yeah, of course, I see where this is going. Obviously, AI got better, and if the last time you tried using AI for coding was a year ago, you will likely get vastly better results now if you try it again with modern tools like the latest version of VS Code, GitHub Copilot, Cursor, Claude Code, whatever it is, and one of those recent models. So yeah. So of course, yeah, this is moving quickly, and again, that is also what I kind of showed you here. I mean, it's hard to say how exactly models develop, but I think what got much better, as I said, is how models follow instructions. And if you factor that in, of course, you could probably draw a curve like this for the models. But what got much better, as I said, is the tools in which these models run, in my opinion, at least. And yeah, that has, of course, improved. So the models available today are unrecognizable from what existed 6 months ago, and I'm not sure if I fully agree with that. But again, I've said everything I have to say on that with models and tools and so on. Anyone still making that argument either hasn't used the current models. So yeah, I generally agree, of course, that if you checked in on these models 1 year ago, you might want to do that again. Part of the problem is that most people are using the free version of AI tools. And this is true, I think. I read that only 5% of ChatGPT users are paying. And obviously with all these tools, especially with the coding tools, though, yeah, the free versions don't get you very far. They might not even give you access to the best tools. If they do, you're out of your usage quota after like 1 or 2 prompts, I guess. So yeah, you need those paid subscriptions, and they are, of course, everything but cheap. They are crazy expensive, depending on how you look at it. If you compare that with, of course, the cost of a developer, and I do think a developer gives you more than these tools, but you want to have a developer with those tools, not the tools instead of a developer. But of course, if you say, if you compare these tools, or if you look at them as an add-on to the salary of a developer, then of course they're not as expensive. But yeah, it's a question of framing. And of course, if you're not running your own company, or if you're not using this on the job, but in your free time, and you might not be willing or not be able to pay those vast amounts of money, and then of course you're stuck with the free versions, which indeed aren't as great. Yeah, I think of my friend who's a lawyer. I keep telling him to try using AI at his firm. He keeps finding reasons why it won't work. Yeah, I mean, I'm getting the point here. And I generally agree, of course, AI and the models and the tools that they have improved, and you can do many things with them, or you can have those tools and those models help you with many things, I would say. How fast is this actually moving? Let me make the pace of improvement concrete. 2022, yeah. Yeah, okay. I've commented on this already. This is interesting here, by the way. Tracking the length of real world tasks measured by how long they take a human expert that a model can complete successfully end to end without human help. About a year ago, the answer was roughly 10 minutes, then it was an hour, several hours. Excuse me. Most recent measurement, Claude Opus 4.5, showed that AI completing tasks that take a human expert nearly 5 hours. So, of course, the big question is how and what you measure exactly here. And what I find very important here, again, is what I've said before. There is a difference between me using an AI tool and model to help me with a certain task, and it may very well then spit out code that would have taken me 1, 2, maybe 3 hours to research and write and everything. That is possible, I think. But it's not doing that because I told it, hey, build me this app. It's doing that because I spent time building a plan, coming up with a good prompt, giving it the right context, steering it in the right direction, focusing on a specific problem. And that is my experience with it. So yes, then it can save me a tremendous amount of time, but not by just throwing some random prompts at it. And I've said it before, there also is this danger of feeling productive when you actually aren't necessarily. It's really easy, also with those very capable models, to get into that mode where you have them generate more and more code. And yeah, yet another feature. And you have scope creep, and you end up with producing more and more code. And you don't really review the code because, that's slow, that's boring. And you end up with an app, maybe after a few hours, that is tremendous in scope and code, but that's actually not good. That's full of bugs, not extensible, might not even be doing what you want, has a bunch of half-finished features, and when it comes to actually polishing the stuff, making it ready for deployment and so on, the cracks start to show. The danger is there. It doesn't have to be that way, but the danger is there. That is, again, just my experience. All of that is my experience. May be very different for other people, of course, but I'm using this stuff every day for hours, and that is my experience. So, yeah. But of course, just to be very clear, I do agree that you can get more done with those models and those latest tools. I mean, that's why I drew those curves like this and not like flat. Of course, you can get more done. This is all just a bit too hyped up here for my taste. The new hiring, so reading the chat again, the new hiring roles are titled developer, but they expect strong expertise in development, cloud technologies, DevOps, and AI. Yeah, I think that's a very good point, by the way. I think there are many things changing. As a developer, you must use these AI tools if you want to get a job. Companies will expect that, and frankly, you can be more productive. But I think what's also changing is the breadth of the knowledge that is expected by most developers. You're no longer just front end. You need to be a generalist. You need to be able to to use AI efficiently in a broad variety of tasks, which are even going beyond generating code. Again, as mentioned here, DevOps, for example. And I think that is also changing. It's possible because of AI, because learning is getting easier to some degree, and also because, of course, with AI, you just need to be good enough, in quotes, because it's a bit more complex than that. But in theory, you just need to be good enough to prompt AI the right way. Now, I think there is a bit more depth here, because in order to be able to prompt it correctly, you need to learn the stuff you're asking for to a certain degree first, but I think that is changing. So that's a very good point. What tools would you use if you needed to create a truly good web design with the help of AI? I would probably still go for inspiration, see whichever pages out there, or maybe mocks on Dribble have a design I like. And then I would probably use that as inspiration, maybe by simply taking screenshots, by telling the AI, hey, I want to have something that's similar to this with a bit more detail. And then I would probably derive a color palette, do that on my own. By the way, one page I really like a lot is this, not sponsored, not owned by me or anything like that, but this is a really great page for creating color palettes and then getting code you can throw into your CSS, or you can, of course, also just copy the hex codes and so on and give that to AI. So essentially I would do a lot of wire up stuff on my own. It's not a single tool I would use to come up with good designs, but instead I would try, as always, I would try to collect the different context pieces, the different pieces of information that I can give to AI to then hopefully help me build that design. What is your opinion about local large language models? I use LM Studio with Qwen 3. It's pretty good. I love local AI models. You can't use them for everything. For coding, they're not good enough in my experience. But for stuff like summarizing or generating text, if you give it some example text snippets, I absolutely love local models and all their advantages, like data not leaving your machine, that they're available offline, free to use. I'm a big fan of local large language models. It's interesting how this guy from the article confirms something the Yuval Noah Harari I have written in this books from 2016-18. I don't know those, unfortunately. I'm so furious about the prices for memory and graphics cards. For the first time in 10 years, I decided to build myself a gaming computer, and then this happened. Tell me about it. This is so bad that computers are essentially becoming unaffordable, or way more expensive, at least. And not just computers, right? So everything that is a computer, like smartphones and everything, because of AI, and there is no end in sight, I think. So yeah. I mean, AI has many negative consequences. It has a lots of positive stuff, I will say. I'm really hyped about certain aspects of AI, I will admit. But there are negative parts too, and obviously prices going up everywhere, and everything being focused on AI is not among the cool stuff. So yeah, tell me about it. Yeah. How does Kimi K2 compare to these top AI tools? I have not worked with Kimi K2, so I don't know. I'm sorry, Max, yet this article is absolute horse dung. Yeah. I'm a bit less harsh, I guess, but as I said, I'm not quite as hyped up as the author of this article clearly is. There are some right points in there, but there also is a lot of stuff I disagree. AI is now building the next AI. So we had this before. Obviously, these AI companies can use these AI tools to build better AI tools and build better models. That's the theory, and I think that will probably be true to some extent. Now, the big question is, will we get to a point where we have this system that basically is self-accelerating, because AI models, AI agents build better AI models, which lead to better agents, which lead to better models. And that then spirals up into a future where we humans are way, way dumber than AI. And obviously, there is all the hardware stuff that would need to keep up with that development, which would be a bottleneck. But let's say that can be fixed, and it would just slow everything down, but it would be fixed eventually. Will we get to that future? And I know there are people that will tell you 100% yes. And I mean, depending on the time horizon, it might be 100% yes. But I don't think anybody can look into the future and confirm that this will happen with a 100% certainty. This is a possibility for sure, and it's absolutely also possible that this will not happen, that the way large language models work, the way these agents work, will hit a natural stop, a natural plateau, where things just get different, but not necessarily better. And I have not seen enough evidence yet. Yes, things got better. There is no doubt about that. But there is a huge difference between things getting better, especially with humans using those tools more efficiently and the tools being better, and those tools self-improving at an infinitely increasing speed. There is a huge difference here. And I know this theory. It may, of course, become true. If it does become true, we don't need to worry about our jobs, though, because then our life as humans will in generally change entirely. But I think far too many people are 100% convinced that this is the clear future and that it will start this year or next year. And I would say we can't look into the future. Let's just see where things go. And until we have that future, let's try to make the best out of, let's try to get the most out of these tools. That is at least what I'll try. This isn't a prediction about what might happen someday. This is OpenAI telling you right now. Yeah, okay, if OpenAI is telling me that this is the future, then it must be true. I take everything back. Yeah, obviously that is what these AI companies are working on, what they want, and again, what may happen. But an AI company telling me that this will happen, that AI will dominate, sorry, that is not the kind of expert or not the kind of person or thing I would put all my trust into. Just as you don't have to put your trust into me, obviously. Every person has their interest. Nobody can look into the future, but obviously, these AI companies have insights into what they're working on, what they're seeing with early versions of next models. I get all that. Still, there is a huge difference between stuff getting better and people being able to use it more efficiently and us entering this spiral. Yeah. Oh yeah, and a good job of me showing the color site but not mentioning it. So it's the Kaigen color generator, kaigen.design/color. That's the site. Sorry. Um, And by the way, since I see the question, you know, if you send AI an image of what you wanted to build, it will not necessarily build exactly that. I've seen it over and over before that it looks somewhat similar and messes up parts of it, but it can be an inspiration source. And you don't want to take like a screenshot of something posted on Dribble and have it rebuild that. That's really copyright infringement, which AI is all about, I guess. But no, I'm talking about inspiration. Like, hey, I like this part here. Can we build something like this? Yeah. That is what I mean. Hey Max, how come you haven't created any course about PHP? Simply because the last time I really used PHP a lot, and I actually only used PHP back then, was over 10 years ago. And yeah, so I'm not qualified to teach PHP right now, I would say. Okay. So yeah, we got the AI companies telling us that this is all going to end. What this means for your job. I'm going to be direct with you because I think you deserve honesty. Um, Dario Amodei, the CEO of Anthropic, has publicly predicted that AI will eliminate 50% of entry level white collar jobs within 1 to 5 years. And I already reacted to that actually on my YouTube channel. This one here, because that is referring to a statement made at the Davos Economic Forum. So yeah, I already reacted to that. But again, I just shared my perspective on that. You can definitely see that future where AI is doing it all, maybe. But then again, if that is the future, we'll have to realign or reorientate ourselves anyways. In all other futures, AI is a tool you want to be able to use efficiently. Yeah, legal work. AI can already read contracts, summarize case law, draft briefs, do legal research. The managing partner, is I mentioned, isn't using AI because it's fun. He's using it because it's outperforming. I mean, also something which I also mentioned before. For I guess every job, the job is not just spitting out code, spitting out legal documents. That is part of the job, and that is definitely going to be changed by AI. It's already being changed today. Other parts of the job are, of course, reviewing what was spit out, which matters if we're talking about code, because if you're building an application where you're taking people's money, you want to make sure it works properly. If we're talking about lawyers, you want to make sure your client does not end up in jail because you reference some because you're using some AI generated legal brief that had serious shortcomings. So that's one part, reviewing and kind of mixing AI results with human expertise. But the other important thing, or one of the other important things, is of course is that agency, being responsible for something, legally responsible, but also from a moral perspective, that of course also matters a lot. Matters a lot. I mean, you might hire a lawyer for certain tasks, not because you don't trust what ChatGPT already told you, though it's good to hear it from an expert too, but because you need somebody who's accountable, who's responsible for that, and ChatGPT is not. So there are more nuances to jobs. It's not just about, I mean, some jobs, of course, are about just generating text, and those jobs are very likely going away, I guess. If your job is a bit more nuanced than that, if it is about planning, architecting, reviewing, agency, these are different levels that I think are much harder to be replaced by AI. So, yeah, I can go through all these examples here and we'll be able to find some areas where AI definitely will have a big impact. And I think you'll always also find some parts of those jobs where it's a bit more nuanced and difficult, I feel. The most recent AI models make decisions that feel like judgment. Yeah, I mean, as I said, they got better also at following instructions in the context of coding, for example, at re-evaluating choices they might have made. So yeah, that all got much, much better. And it's a mixture of the model, of it following instructions, so how well it does that, of the system prompt that may be baked into the tool you're using, your prompt, the context. It's really a combination of all these things. And yet that, as I mentioned, definitely got better if used correctly, if used efficiently. I think the honest answer is that nothing that can be done on a computer is safe in the medium term. Okay, that goes back to what I said. One future, not the only one. What you should actually do. Yeah, now is the interesting part. But before we dive into that, so let me catch up with the chat. Did you try GitHub Copilot SDK? No, I'm actually using it integrated in Visual Studio Code, not the SDK. I was thinking of the CLI. I haven't used that either, but I also haven't used the SDK yet. There are so many amazing SDKs and tools I would love to use, like the Anthropic Agent SDK, the AI SDK by Vercel, which I have used a bit though, quite a bit. But yeah, I haven't used GitHub Copilot SDK. How do I learn the stuff I teach? Do I read books? I do indeed read books, even to this day, to some degree. But mostly I learn, I don't really learn something so that I can teach it. Instead, I teach stuff which I know because I'm using it in my projects, because I'm internal projects, client projects in the past, also projects I publish, whatever. So, of course, to some degree, when I create a course, I dive a bit deeper and learn stuff I want to include in the course, which I maybe haven't needed for my projects before. But I don't sit down and think, oh, well, I should teach, I don't know, C++. So I should learn C++ now. That's not what I do. Bottom line of the article, a guy, AI founder, creating hype around AI. Yeah, that is kind of the thing here. So, okay, yeah, what should we do? I'm not writing this to make you feel helpless. I'm writing this because I think the single biggest advantage you can have right now is simply being early to understand it, early to use, early to adapt. Start using AI seriously, not just as a search engine. Sign up for the paid version of Claude, ChatGPT. Make sure you're using the best models. These apps often default to faster, dumber models. Blah, blah, blah. You can follow me on X. Yeah, of course. If you want to keep your job, make sure you follow Matt Schumer. Second, and the more important, and I'll comment on this in a second. More important, don't just ask it quick questions. That's the mistake most people make. They treat it like Google. Instead, push it into your actual work. If you're a lawyer, feed it a contract, and so on. By the way, I mean, the problem with all these models is you want to be careful, whatever you're using them for, and the tools that run those models, like Claude Code and so on. You may have agreed, or you might not even be able to opt out of these tools using whatever you give them for further training. You can turn that off on ChatGPT. You can disable this for most tools, and for some tools it is disabled by default, but you want to check that because otherwise you might be leaking client data to OpenAI. And yeah, I'm not sure if you want to do that. And even if you disabled this training thing, you should always keep in mind you're sharing your code and so on with those companies in the end. And I'm doing that too. I'm using these AI tools, but it is something to keep in mind. And depending on what you're working on, that might be a problem. Also, a legal problem. Just a side note. Yeah, don't assume it can't do something just because it seems too hard. Try it. If you're a lawyer, don't just give it quick research questions. Give it a contract. Yeah, we had that before, right? That you should give it a contract. Yeah, feed it a contract. We had that already. If it even kind of works today, you can be almost certain that in 6 months it'll do it near perfectly. That this might be the most important year of your career. Work accordingly. I don't say that to stress you out. I say it because right now there's a brief window where most people at most companies are still ignoring this. Okay. Once everyone figures it out, the advantage disappears. Have no ego about it. The managing partner isn't too proud to spend hours a day with AI. He's doing it specifically because he's senior enough to understand what's at stake. Yeah, get your financial house in order. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not trying to scare you into anything drastic, but if you believe even partially that the next few years could bring real disruption, then basic financial resilience matters more than it did a year ago because you might lose your job, I guess. Think about where you stand and lean into how much more is there. Okay, I will make a pause here before I continue. So, one important thought I have about these initial paragraphs here. The article up there essentially mostly argues that AI is becoming better and better, and we're going to enter that phase where AI will basically spiral up and will make itself better and better. The author of this article, the way this is written, clearly believes in this future. If that's the case, this all doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. If that is the case, if you're convinced, if this article convinced you or anything else, that in a year or two, AI will do it all, then you don't need to build any advantage right now. You don't need to learn how to efficiently use AI right now. You just need to be good enough to keep your job for now, if you believe that this will all spiral up and AI will take over anyways. Because there will be no job in that future if that is what you believe in. So there is no reason to be good at using AI and to use it efficiently as a tool if it's going to replace everything in a year or two anyways. You just need to be good enough to make it through that year then, I guess. And that can be something you're convinced of. Absolutely. I can't look into the future. But I don't think this is a logical conclusion from this article. There is no reason to do that. And I mean, what does this company do? It's a personal AI assistant, writing and productivity tools. That is what Matt Schumer is CEO of. So of course, clearly, it makes sense that you use tools like the tools he's building to stay ahead of the curve and to use AI efficiently. He's not writing it here, at least not yet. But that's kind of course, what you might be inclined to do if you read an article like this. Okay, yeah, I gotta get better here. What's this guy doing? A really good article. Oh, yeah, maybe I should use a tool like this to get better at using AI for writing stuff. I don't know. So, yeah, this does not make sense. I actually, and this is the fun part, I actually do agree that you should use AI seriously. I do agree that if you can afford it, you should get a paid plan of any of these tools. Doesn't matter. I agree that if you're a developer, you should use these tools. I've said it before. They can make you more efficient. You should learn how to efficiently use them. You should experiment with them. You should not blindly trust them. I believe all these things, and I have said them before. But only if you're not convinced that everything is going to change in a year or two. I don't know what will happen in 10 or 50 years. Nobody knows. I don't know what will happen in 1 year. But if you're convinced, I've said it before, if you're convinced that in 1 year everything's over, you don't need to worry. But I don't think that it will be the case. I think you can get a lot out of these tools, and you should therefore learn them. And of course, you can rightfully say, I'm selling courses on this stuff, right? Or on some of that stuff, at least. Yeah, 100%. I have my interests too. You don't have to take my courses though. You should literally just get Claude Code or anything and try it out on your projects. If you think that one possible outcome is that AI is not taking over. So yeah, you should take it seriously, but this point in this article doesn't make a lot of sense for me. This might be the most important year of your career. Also interesting. Super easy to feel stressed out. I think I made a video about this too. I'm not even sure if I did, but I think I did. Relax. Where is it? Relax. This one. It's easy to feel behind as a developer. And there's so much pressure on all these social media sites, on X and everywhere, in an article like this, which tells you that you gotta stay ahead of the curve. You gotta make sure you're not left behind. This is the most important year of your career. You can feel so stressed out that you don't get anything done. I absolutely recommend that you do play around with these tools, that you learn how to use them efficiently, but so much has changed over the last 2 years. So much will probably change. If not for us entering this spiral, which I don't think we will, still so much will change. Simply the way these tools work, the features they expose, new tools that might emerge, new prompting patterns that may emerge. What you learn today will not be super relevant in a year or so, likely. Some parts of it still will, but not everything. So no, I don't think this is the most important year of your career. I do think you should just use these tools, but you don't need to lock down 7 days a week, 24 hours, and hustle away. I don't think you need to, but you should be open-minded. You should give these tools a chance. Now, I don't know about the financial stuff here. It kind of goes against the other points, I guess. As I said, yeah, this will kind of be important if you're convinced that you're out of a job in 2 years. And I know that with all that uncertainty, that the fear is, of course, there, and the job market is bad. So, of course, having a good financial situation will help. But let's be honest, that always helped. So, yeah, kind of the same applies as I said for these other points. Think about where you stand and lean into what's hardest to replace. Some things will take longer, relationships, yeah. Rethink what you're telling your kids, the standard playbook, get good at grades, get good college. It points directly, but the thing that will matter most for the next generation is learning how to work with these tools. I mean, why would this matter again if they're replacing everything anyways? Yeah. I think one thing, maybe, I don't think he'll write it here. One thing that is important is using these tools efficiently will matter, but what also matters is that you don't lose the ability to learn, that you don't take those tools as a shortcut and you end up in a situation where you're totally lost without them and you have no idea of what you're doing. Because at that point, you're in a situation where your skill level is essentially the skill level of the AI model and tool you're using, and that is a dangerous place to be in, I think. So that will be important, I would say. Using these tools, being open-minded, but at the same time, not just focusing on them and forgetting everything around it. And that is really tricky, but I think that will be important. Your dreams just got a lot closer. I've spent most of this section talking about threats, so let me talk about the other side. If you ever wanted to build something, but didn't have the technical skills or the money, that barrier is largely gone. It definitely got lower, but then again, we had no code tools before that, and depending on the complexity on what you're building, there's so much more still to building applications, building software than just spitting out code. The architecting stuff is important. The architecture matters. Bugs are not just an annoyance. They can be a serious issue. They can make you broke depending on what kind of bug you're having. Serious security issues can lead to mass data exfiltration, can lead to lawsuits. I mean, there are serious implications. Not super likely, but also not totally unlikely. So bugs are not just an annoyance you can fix with another prompt. So yeah, you can build more, but at the same time, depending on what you're building, if you don't know anything about the code that's coming out of the tool you're using, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I wouldn't feel confident deploying that and using that. Want to learn a new skill? The best tutor in the world is now available. Again, yeah, AI is a great tutor, and I think it's great to have AI as an additional assistant that can help you with learning. If you learn only with AI, is up to you. I think, obviously, since I create courses, you get value out of mixing different forms of learning: a book and AI, courses and AI, documentation and AI. So having those different advantages of these different tools. But AI for tutoring, for asking questions, is a super helpful tool you should absolutely also leverage. Pursue the things you're passionate about. You never know where they'll lead. I agree with that for once. And in a world where the old career paths are getting disrupted, the person who spent a year building something they love might end up better positioned. I do agree with that. Now, obviously, it's not always that easy in life. You can't always just do what you love. And of course, you try to make strategically correct decisions. But life was always full of uncertainty. And now it's easier to feel that uncertainty than ever before, I guess. So always, even before AI, doing what you're passionate about, if you were in a situation where you could do it, and not everybody is, unfortunately, but if you are, is never a bad idea. I do agree with that. Build the habit of adapting, and this also was always true. You, of course, want to be adapting. Now with AI, it all feels a bit quicker because it probably is moving at a faster pace. But yeah, being able to adapt was always a valuable skill. Spend 1 hour a day experimenting with AI. Yeah, I don't know. Be open-minded about it, as I said. Amode has a thought experiment I can't stop thinking about. Imagine it's 2027, a new country appears overnight, 50 million citizens, everyone smarter than any Nobel Prize winner. They think 10 to 100 times faster, they never sleep, they can use the internet. What would a national security advisor say? The answer is obvious. The single most serious national security threat we've faced in a century, possibly ever. He thinks we're building that country. He wrote a 20,000-word essay about it last month, framing this moment as a test of whether humanity is mature enough to handle what it's creating. The upside, if we get it right, is staggering. AI could compress a century of medical research into a decade. The downside, if we get it wrong, is equally real. AI that behaves in ways its creators can't predict or control. This isn't hypothetical. Yeah. The people building this technology are simultaneously more excited and more frightened. I mean, this is kind of related and kind of not. As I said, so that AI has a lot of positives. I said already, I agree generally. It can be a super, super useful tool and accelerator, 100%. That it can also obviously be negative in many, many ways is also clear, I would say. And AI kind of taking control, taking over is one thing if we're in that world where we have that self-improving AI. And yeah, I see that point in that world. Super big danger, obviously. Even if we're not in that world, we can already see many negative consequences of AI these days. I mean, the fact that it's the main topic for over 2 years now is annoying enough for many people. And even though I'm excited about AI in general, it's not like, I've said before, if AI weren't here, I probably wouldn't be less happy. So yeah, that can be annoying, but that's probably the least negative part. We already see so much spam, so many bots. We're already having an internet, which I think the majority of the content, if I got that right, on the internet is already generated and consumed by AI. So what is that? Already we have these negative effects. And yeah, even without AI taking over, there is enough negative stuff about it, I will say. Also lots of good stuff, definitely. But also already lots of negative stuff. So what I know this isn't a fad. The technology works, it improves. I know the next 2 to 5 years are going to be disorienting. I know the people who will come out of this best are the ones who start engaging now. And I know that you deserve to hear this from someone who cares about you, not from a headline 6 months from now when it's too late. We're past the point where this is an interesting dinner conversation. The future is already here, it just hasn't knocked on your door yet. It's about to. If this resonated with you, share it with someone in your life who should be thinking about this. The original post is available here. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so I think I shared all my thoughts about this article. In case you want to read it, it's called Something Big is Happening by Matt Schumer. Let me catch up with the chat. Where am I? Is Google really ahead of the AI race since Google has access to more of the internet and the rest of the models only have a third of the internet? I think for coding models, Google is currently not ahead. Gemini 3 Pro is not really a model I use, and I don't see it mentioned a lot. I think AI in general for consumers and also for businesses, but especially for consumers, Google is in an awesome position with AI summaries, with how they can add AI to every single product they have, which are being used by millions and billions of people all over the world. Google is in a very, very good position. And of course, they're generating vast amounts of data every day due to all these offerings they have. So I think they're in a very good position. And we have some interesting discussions here about how to about this article and AI in general. I'll not comment on everything, but really interesting points here. AI can't replace licensed professionals because the licensing boards would never allow it. I mean, that is also a totally different thing. And I mean, there are so many layers to this. I tried to focus on what I think could happen or might matter, but when we're talking about AI taking jobs, even in a world where AI is super amazing, can do it all, we still got that accountability stuff and so on. And we still, of course, got regulation that it's hard to imagine, especially in Germany, and I guess in a lot of other countries too, that you would be allowed to have an AI doctor in instead of a real person, or that you would be running what's it called? You're working as an accountant or as a tax consultant, and you have a bunch of employees that are all AI, and it's hard to imagine that this would be allowed in Germany, depending on what exactly the job description is. And there's a lot of official stuff where probably AI wouldn't be allowed, also for data protection reasons. So that's yet another layer. I mean, regulation is a totally different layer, especially in Germany and the European Union, but I guess all over the world it matters to some degree. Another area, of course, is companies are not as fast as adapting as some people think they are. No matter how amazing AI may be, they may be faster than they were at adopting computers and the internet. But even then, if AI could do everything in a year from now, companies would not start firing everybody in a year from now. At least, definitely not in Germany, for example. My experience is that Opus is great for smaller or repetitive tasks, but too large of a feature, the quality just drops so fast. Yeah, I mean, kind of the same experience for me, by the way. Opus is a great model, also for difficult tasks, but Codex 5.3 seems to perform better for those for me. Yeah. Have you considered reviewing live code from your students? Yeah, doing code reviews is definitely something I do consider. And in general, I want to build something or work on these streams to also make them a bit more interactive and have a broader variety of things we do. So yeah, I'll try to share more about that soon, hopefully. Which courses would you recommend someone who's switching industries? I'm thinking of taking yours on React and then TypeScript. Yeah, these are good choices, I think, because React, TypeScript. I would always recommend also using AI, of course, as you know. So React, TypeScript, of course, have the advantage that AI loves that stack, so it will kind of come naturally to you. You might also want to pick up a JavaScript course or dive into some public JavaScript resources if you don't want to buy another course, because that can get quite a lot of courses. And I would recommend also getting into those AI tools. And use them kind of side by side whilst you're learning. So that you don't just have AI generate all the code and you don't understand anything, but you use it as an accelerator. You maybe have it generate some example applications, have it explain that code, and then kind of match that up with what you learned in a course, and kind of try to get the best out of both worlds. That would be my suggestion here. Part of building good software is making it easy to maintain and enhance. Getting AI just to make things work and blindly accepting whatever it creates is digging your own grave. Yeah, absolutely. Companies are investing so much in data centers, and this is statistical AI models, but we will have a bloodbath in markets when we discover a new approach to AI. Yeah, I mean, that's the part that is impossible to predict in the end. You can definitely throw more and more compute at it, but if there is like a fundamental blocker or issue with how large language models work, where you just can't get to 100%, and 90% will not cut it, even 95% will not cut it. You need 100%. To replace a human, you need to be 100% able to do what that human did. So if you can't get to that point, of course, other AI models may be able to do that, but we don't have those yet. So it's just not as set in stone as some people say. Yeah. So, okay, that was this article. Cost us quite some time now. I prepared some articles which I also wanted to explore, but yeah, we spent quite some time on articles already, and I don't want to bore you, obviously. So you tell me, more articles or me diving into Svelte 5? And just to be clear, I'm not teaching Svelte 5 here. I haven't worked with Svelte in 5 years or so. It's about me getting back into Svelte for the next 40 minutes or so. So yeah, please, you let me know. What will it be? More articles or me diving into Svelte? And I'll just sit here and wait for you to write articles or Svelte or something like this. So we got 2 times Svelte. Does AI create good Svelte projects too, or just mostly React? Well, since I really haven't worked with Svelte, I can't tell from personal experience. But I would imagine that you probably have to give it more context pointed at specific documentation pages if you wanted to use the latest version of Svelte, because it probably has seen more older Svelte code than more recent code, which is the same for React 2, but Svelte 5 was released only, I think, 1.5 years ago, whereas React, of course, has also seen releases over and over again. But the biggest changes with React, hooks has been 8 years ago or 7 years ago. So I think you might need to provide more context when working with Svelte. But again, that's just what I would think. I haven't tried it. Okay, so I see it's not like 100 people wrote here, even though we got a decent amount of people in the stream, but everybody wrote Svelte. So everybody that did write something wrote Svelte. So I will dive into Svelte. Now, here I am on the Svelte homepage doing the Svelte tutorial. And of course, I'm not totally new to Svelte, so maybe let's start a bit differently. Svelte, of course, is a framework for building user interfaces on the web, an alternative to React, you could say. And this is, in Svelte, you build components just like in React, and this is what a component would look like. And this looks kind of similar to what you might know from Vue, for example, because it's a single file. And I'm saying it like this because that is what I know from Svelte, even though this is Svelte 5, I guess. But that is how it always worked, at least when I worked with it. You have a script, you have a template, and you have your styles all in one and the same file. That is how you build Svelte files, which are your components. And then this is a feature that's new with Svelte 5. So Svelte 5 was released in October 2024. It became stable there. And I think I recall the biggest change was runes. So let me see. Other frameworks have adopted fine-grained reactivity using signals like Solid.js or Angular. Yeah, and yeah, that's important. In the past, with older versions, and this might not be news to you, but I know those older versions, Svelte basically was more like a compiler. You used some JavaScript syntax, which then was compiled away into something else. And you had this $:colon thing at the beginning of a line, and after it, you would have code that should act as state, so that should, in the end, trigger re-renders or change parts of the page when it changes, but that would compile to something else. And they changed this now with Svelte 5, as I understand it, by introducing runes, which is very similar to signals in Solid.js, by the looks of it. You create a stateful value count by using this $state function, which is built into Svelte. You give it an initial state, and then you can change that. And I think it will then automatically update the parts of the DOM where you're using this value. So that is my understanding of Svelte 5. Runes are their state management mechanism, therefore, the state rune. And you have a derived rune, like a computed function in Angular for deriving a value from some state. So if count updates, this updates too. You have effect so that you can run code if some value changes. We're here. So we have some runes, some state runes here, and we have our effect. And in that effect, we're using, what are we using? We're using the color and the size, which are these values here. And if they change, this is automatically recognized by Svelte. So it will then rerun this effect function. And this allows you to do stuff when state changes. We got props, so that inside of a component, we can pass props to a component just as we know it from React, and we can get hold of them through the props rune. That is all what I understood back then when I briefly had a look at Svelte. I haven't written any Svelte code in quite some time though. So, okay, yeah, we got if expressions here in our template to render content conditionally, each to loop through content, key blocks destroy and recreate their contents, like the key prop in React, I guess. Await for deferred rendering. Okay, yeah, so let's take a look at that tutorial again. Oh, and also important, there also is Svelte Kit, this thing here, which is essentially Next.js for Svelte. Just from a pure DX perspective, where does Svelte rank for you personally amongst the other JavaScript frameworks? So for me personally, as I said, I haven't used Svelte in 6 years, but the reason is not that I don't like it or anything like that. It's just there's limited time, and with all the course updates, with all the projects you're working on, and so on, Svelte was just not the thing I had time for learning. And I mean, there's only so many projects I would be working on. And if I'm using React in one project and Angular in another, then I'm already not using Vue, which I would love to use because Vue is amazing. And I would definitely not use Svelte because, well, I only need, if I have 2 projects, I have at most 2 frameworks I might be using there. So yeah, that's why I haven't used Svelte, but Svelte Kit is essentially Next.js, and yeah, I said that already, and therefore it's hard for me to rank the developer experience of Svelte. Now I'm in the tutorial here, and Svelte is a tool for building web applications. Yeah. These components are compiled into small, efficient JavaScript modules. Okay, so we still do that compilation. You can build your entire app with Svelte, and you can build a full stack application with Svelte Kit. Okay, yeah, basic Svelte. Let's go. My first component, hello world. So of course I can edit this, get a live update. Great. So what should I do? Add a script tag. Yeah, so okay, let's add a script tag here. Let's use TypeScript. Whoops. And then in there, yeah, okay. I mean, that's all pretty boring, I guess. What is it? Is it single quotes or double quotes? Yeah, it's single quotes. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And I can already, I guess, jump ahead. I could have something. I mean, we already saw that, right? So we have this. We have the count. We could have a button. Now, I don't know how that works. Let's see. I haven't looked that closely at the code we saw before. So if I have this increment, I don't know. How do we, is it on click? I think I have to wait for that lecture. But I don't want to wait. How can I listen to events? How do I listen to events? On click it is, okay. So it's on click. Is it then increment? And then here, I think it's just count plus equals 1. Yeah, okay. So that is state management. I think I already jumped ahead quite a bit here, but yeah, that is what we saw. Dynamic attributes. Oh yeah, we can also set attributes to dynamic values. That makes sense. Styling. Styling is done in the same file, right? Yeah, so right. Yeah, okay. So here we can say background color red. Sure. Nested components. Add a script tag to the top that imports the, so we got 2 components here. Okay. So of course, yeah, we can do like script lang equals ts. And we can import nested from nested svelte. And then I guess we can just render it here with JSX. This is another paragraph from nested. Perfect. ordinarily, strings are inserted as plain text, meaning that characters like, yeah, but sometimes you need to render HTML. For example, the words you're reading right now exist in a markdown file. Okay, so if you want to render something as HTML, we add at, wrong key, add HTML. This string contains HTML, and now this is rendered. And if we had something like style, does this work? Or does it try to interpolate that? I'm not sure. Yeah, but this is how we can render HTML in general, I guess. Doesn't perform any sanitization. That makes sense. So yeah, we already saw state. Okay, that's pretty much the example I built with increment. I keep on hitting the save shortcut. Deep state. As we saw in the previous exercise, state reacts to reassignments, but it also reacts to mutations. We call this deep reactivity. Make numbers a reactive array. Okay, so we can use a more complex value as a state value. So not just primitive values, but also reference values like objects or arrays. And if I now set if I say numbers push 5. Okay, interesting. So I mutate this object in memory, this array, but thanks to to Svelte's compiler, this is pretty much picked up as a state change and leads to an update of the page. And this is, by the way, different, of course, from React, for example. In React, if you have a state that contains an array and you push directly into that array, that, of course, will not lead to a page update. Instead, you want to call setState and use that form where you get the old array as an input, and then you manipulate it and return the updated array. Let's start a new Udemy course. Yeah, building a Udemy course live in the stream. You get it for free, and then I got a course to sell on Udemy thereafter. I'm not sure if it would be up with my quality standards, though, since it's quite a bit more stammering and improvised. What I love about Svelte is it's usually just one chosen way to do things in a framework. Also a great thing about Vue, why I prefer over React. Convention over configuration. Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's also one advantage Angular, for example, has. And I created a video about Angular this week where I talk about it. Having clear rules on how to do something, of course, takes away a lot of uncertainty or room for error. It has disadvantages for sure, too. There's always a downside, but that is one thing I do like, excuse me, about Angular, for example, that there are clear rules. And you know, I'm German, so of course I like clear rules. So, yeah, okay. We got that. Often you will need to derive state from other state. For this, we have the derived rune. Yeah, we already saw that. So we got total, derived. That could be numbers length. And then I guess we can output total. And now this changes as I add more and more numbers. Inspecting state, it's often useful to be able to track the value of a piece of state as it changes. Inside the add number function, we've added a console log, but if you click the button and open the console, you'll see a warning and a message saying the message could not be cloned. Do we have a console in here? This one here? Yeah. Your console log contains state proxies. Consider using inspect. That's because numbers is a reactive proxy. So it's basically a wrapper around the value which can listen to changes and step in. Firstly, we can create a non-reactive snapshot of the state with state snapshot. Okay, so we can say state snapshot numbers, and that basically pulls out the value out of the proxy, I guess. Alternatively, we can use the inspect rune. So I could also here say inspect numbers. And what does this do? Okay, that will just print it. So both inspect will print it. If I comment this out, I just got one print statement, but if I comment it back in, I got two, and inspect also gives me a stack trace. Okay. Okay, so that is how we can basically log and see those values. You can customize how the information is displayed with inspect with. Okay. Effects. So far we talked about reactivity in terms of state, but that's only half the equation. State is only reactive if something is reacting to it. The thing that reacts is called an effect. So that's what I already talked about before. Most of the time you shouldn't. Effect is best thought of as an escape hatch, pretty much like use effect and react. Most of the time when you use it, it's wrong, but sometimes you do actually need it. So let's say we want to use set interval to keep track of how long the component has been mounted. Create the effect. Okay, effect. And we have set interval, and we have our function here, and we have, oh, we've got an interval state, I see. Okay, so that's 1000 initially. And then here we want to increment elapsed by 1 second. And now this is updating because we're outputting elapsed here. And we got this effect. This effect fires whenever elapsed or interval changes. And of course, interval is not changing right now, but elapsed is changing because it's changed from in here. So it's changed from in here, and no. But, interesting. I wonder, my understanding is that the effect reruns whenever elapsed changes, though I'm not sure because it's inside a nested function. But if that were the case, we would be creating more and more intervals, which is not what's happening. Do they talk about this here? If elapsed weren't a state, well, then the UI wouldn't update. I mean, if I speed up, this is faster. If I slow down, this doesn't slow down. Maybe I pressed speed up too often. It's just getting faster and faster. I don't know. I think I broke it. Or did I have an error in my code? No, I think it was the right one. Oh yeah, if we then click slow down button, it doesn't work. That's because we're not clearing out the old intervals. Okay, reading helps. So I'm lazy. Let me. Yeah, please let me copy and paste. Okay, so is there an auto format? No. Whoops. Okay. Yeah, not sure. Okay, so this is a cleanup function which clears the interval so that it's not being created over and over again. Yeah, it mentioned a cleanup function. Yeah, that explains the slowdown part. I'm still not sure. My understanding is that when changing elapsed, this also triggers the effect again, but I'm not sure. Maybe it doesn't because it's inside of a nested function in there. It doesn't say that here. If the effect function doesn't read any state when it runs, it will only run once. Okay, So, well, but it does read elapsed here. It reads it in order to update it. I mean, that would be written as elapsed +1, right? So that is reading. So my understanding is that the effect gets recreated every time elapsed triggers, but that actually can't be the case, I think, because it would create a new interval all the time, and we could just use set a timeout in that case. So, I'm not sure. Oh, okay, it talks about it later on. States that are in a closure aren't tracked. Okay, thank you. So jumping ahead here. In the preceding exercises, we used runes to add reactivity, but we can also use runes outside components. Yeah. So it's a general thing like signals. It's just a mechanism built with just JavaScript features so that we can manage a value and be notified when it changes. And I guess that can be helpful. I guess so for sharing state, right? So the counter component in this exercise are all importing the counter object from shared.js, but it's a normal object. So in shared.js, we can turn our normal object here into state so that it becomes a reactive value. The state rune is only available inside of Svelte files. So we need to rename this. This causes an error because you can't use runes in normal JavaScript files, only Svelte.js. Let's fix that. Okay. So let's name this Svelte.js. And then in counter, we're importing from shared.svelte.js. Now we got a reactive counter imported here, so we can change it and it updates. Yeah. And it updates across all 3 instances of this component because the counter is not created inside of theirs, but in the shared file. So on the other hand, if we had a counter in here, so if it were not using that shared counter, then we would see counter, hello. Oh, if that, needs to be an object with count, of course. So now we would see only here does it change, because now every instance would have its own state if you create the state in here. But of course, if you leverage the fact that you can use runes outside of components too, you can create a reactive value here and have cross-component state, depending on what you need. So far, we've dealt exclusively with internal state. That is to say, the values are only accessible within a given component. In any real application, you'll need to pass data from one component to its children, and for that we use props. So we got nested, answer is 42. So what we do here is we use props. And that allows us to get a props object here. So it's a props object. And then we can use destructuring. No. We can do this. And of course, we can do this all in one step too. Like this. So that's what we had before. So props. Okay, default values. We can easily specify default values, by using destructuring, and we can use a default value. And now if we don't set this prop, the default value, the default value is used for that. Spread props. In this exercise, we've forgotten to pass the name prop. Okay, so we got a component that gets a bunch of props. We're setting them like this, and what we can see is that our object that holds the values that we want to share as props has the same names for all the properties in there. So these names here are the same as the props we're expecting here. And I guess what we can then do, we can pass them prop by prop, or we can use the spread operator in JavaScript, the 3 dots, to spread our props. Just as we can also do it in React. If blocks. HTML doesn't have a way of expressing logic. If count. Okay, so we can say So we can use a ternary, of course, to add or not add the s here. But we can also say if count greater 10, and we have, what is it? Oh, it's, that's not the kind of syntax I like. Hashtag and then slash. I would have preferred end if or something, but yeah, slash if it is. And then we can say count is greater than 10. So now nothing happens until I press this one more time. And now we got this. And yeah, it's inside the button, but okay. Else blocks, just like in JavaScript, an if block can have an else block. So we could say, now outside of the button here, which probably makes more sense, colon else. Whoa, they're going wild. Hashtag colon slash. We got it all. So count is between 0 and 10. So now we see that because count is 0 indeed, and the else block is therefore active. But if I click this and we go above 10, we see is greater than 10, which is of course coming from the main branch of this if statement. We can also have else if. Well, I'm not going to type this, but makes sense. Each, this is for looping. When building user interfaces, you'll often find yourself working with lists of data. In this exercise, we've repeated the button markup. Instead of laboriously copying, pasting, and editing, so instead of repeating that button here a bunch of times, I guess what we can do, if all that changes is the color, we can use each colors as color. That's the syntax, okay. And then we have / each, just as with the if statement. And then we can have our button in there. And I guess we can have no, thank you, no access key. We can have like style. No, we want to set that dynamically, and we want to set the background style to color. And yeah, we can add on click and set selected equals red, no, equals color, I mean. Okay. And then close that button. That's not working. Yeah, we need the area label, where we also add that. And we should not use self-closing, okay. But why is that color not applied? Oh, we don't do it, it's not like in React. Okay, so it's style, it's a string. And then we have our color here, okay. Okay. You can get the current index as a second argument. Okay, so we could say I, and then we could use that as a label, as a caption, for example. Okay. Good morning. Yeah, good evening from my side. By default, updating the value of an each block will add or remove DOM nodes at the end of the block if the size changes, and update the remaining DOM. That might not be what you want. It's easier to show why than to explain. Inside thing.svelte, name is a dynamic prop, but emoji is constant. So we're getting name as a prop, and emoji is then derived from this constant here, from this object, based on the name. Click the remove first thing button a few times and notice what happens. Yeah, so what we can see is that the emoji stays the same, but the value assigned to it changes, right? So now apple is donut, now apple is egg. So that's of course wrong. It removes the last component, it then updates the name value, but not the emoji. If you're coming from React, this might seem strange because you're not used to the entire component re-rendering when state changes. Svelte works differently. The component runs once and subsequent updates are fine-grained. This makes things faster and gives you more control. Okay. One way to fix it would be to make emoji a derived value, but it makes more sense to remove the first thing component altogether rather than removing the last one. Since this is called remove first thing and we update by calling shift, which does indeed remove the first element of an array. To do that, we specify a unique key for each iteration. So how do we do that? Each things as thing. Okay, and that is how we specify a key. So, where are we? Here. Thing.id. So that's essentially the equivalent to the key prop in React, I guess, which gives everything a unique identifier. And that allows Svelte then to target the exact element that should be removed. So if we shift things like this, we remove the first element from the things array, and that has the name apple, but because we give every item here a clear key, Svelte is able to properly remove that actual DOM element from the list instead of the last one, which is the default, and therefore it will properly remove this one now. And now banana, and so on. Okay. So just like, so I guess to cut it short, just like in React, to me it seems like it's a good idea to make sure you assign a key. I guess unless you have a list where you're not changing anything or where you're fine with the default behavior of the last element being removed. That's at least how I understand it. Most web applications have to deal with asynchronous data at some point. Svelte makes it easy to await the values of promises directly in your markup. Await promise, then number. Okay, yeah. I mean, that is pretty cool. It gives you a nice declarative way of showing the content once the promise resolved. So once the data was loaded, for example. Showing something whilst you're waiting, then showing something once it's resolved, and showing a fallback if it fails. So I guess we do await our promise here, which is roll, and roll is coming from utils.js, and what we have here is simply a promise that has a timer to wait for a second before it rolls a random number, and sometimes it will generate an error if we, in like 1/3 of all cases. So we await, then we have then number, you rolled a number, now it's available, so we get the resolved value here automatically. So the value this promise yields with it's called resolve. It's called resolve everywhere. Why are we changing this here? So the number it resolved to, we get that. And then we can also catch an error, which we also get automatically. And yeah, we can say error message here. And yeah, we could add some styling, but I don't care about the styles here. So and now it's end await. Okay, so roll the dice. Rolling, you roll the 2. Failed. 2. Do we always get a 2? Well, would be any number between 1 and 6, but I guess 2 it is. Oh, now it's a 1. Great. Okay, yeah, pretty convenient. I'm a student of your Flutter course. Please advise me. Not sure what to advise on, to be honest. How to learn Flutter? That would be by building stuff. So taking the course, building stuff, using AI, but not just AI for code generation without understanding the code, but yeah, hard to advise. Yeah, I need a bit more detail. Recently ended your Docker course. Now I'm in the GitHub Actions. Thank you for your content. Thank you for being part of these courses. I hope you're getting a lot out of them. I hope the knowledge is helpful. Thank you so much. And thank you all, by the way. So many nice comments. So yeah, thank you all so much. These if blocks are so much more verbose than React. I mean, I will say, just like in Angular, I actually am a bit of a fan of this template-like syntax. But then again, I've written so much React code over the last years. I'm not even sure if I have a preference anymore. What I find really weird is that we have like this mixture of hashtag, colon. I get the slash here, like in HTML elements, but it feels so inconsistent. I mean, why is this not a hashtag here? There probably is a good reason, but I don't know. But there is worse in life than that. I will say that. Svelte and its creators seem to always push default server-side rendering, which always was strange to me. Doesn't the majority of applications fall under a single-page application use case? I think I get what you mean, because I think, and I might be wrong, but I think that from what I picked up, when you create new Svelte projects, it always tries to point you at SvelteKit, and I guess there probably is a way of opting out of server-side rendering there, though, so you could probably build single-page applications with it. But then again, I'm not sure. But I get what you mean if that is the case, if SvelteKit is the default. Now, I wouldn't say that most applications are single-page applications. Unfortunately, the boring answer is I think it really depends. And if you're building like a solo project, it is more likely full stack, because most applications need some kind of backend, and often it's easier if you do that in a full stack approach with something like SvelteKit, for example, but or with Next.js or whatever it is. But then again, of course, for many applications, you might have an admin area, which is a single page application, which talks to a REST API, and you might have separate projects there. So then that would be a single page application, of course. And I get the point that with React, for example, you can create a Vite project with React, and that's a single page application. If you want full stack, you use Next.js, and there is a clearer separation there. Hi Max, I'm taking your courses for about 5 years. Very good content. I feel confident I'm learning everything that matters about the theme. Thank you. Well, thank you so much. Yeah, that's just awesome to hear. Means a lot to me, honestly. Thank you so much. I'm happy my courses are helpful. Thank you. How can I send a message? You can just write whatever you want to know here. I don't do any personal consulting, though, if that is what you're looking for. I'm sorry. Okay. So what do we have? DOM events. You can listen to any DOM event on an element. Yeah, okay. You can also declare event handlers inline. Yeah, we can do that in React too, and in Angular. Normally, event handlers run during bubbling phase. Sometimes you want event handlers during the capture phase. Yeah, okay. I'll be very honest. I don't know if I've realistically ever in the last years switched to capture. Oh, and now it's hanging. Oh God, is that still alive? I think my entire machine is hanging now. Okay, it's working again. Okay. Well, looks like I went through the tutorial. So actually a good point to stop. Obviously, there's way more to Svelte, but I gotta go. Yeah, I enjoyed the stream. I hope the article was interesting. I hope that Svelte brief intro was kind of interesting. Got some ideas for future streams where I also want to like bring you more along, maybe do something like code reviews or give you more ways of suggesting what I should do. Because even though I'm doing this for over a year, I'm still kind of figuring out this streaming stuff because it's not my main job, but I like it a lot. I'll continue streaming, therefore, of course. The plan is to stream again next Thursday, so today in a week. Pretty much the plan is always to stream on a Thursday. And yeah, I would love you to join me again. And I hope you liked it. And I wish you a great day. And wish you all the best. Yeah, and it's every Thursday at 5 p.m. German time. So I think that's, what is that? Is that 11 a.m. Eastern time and so on. So next live stream is today in a week, same time. And sorry, Sahan, about the Flutter project, but as I said, maybe I'll be able to do some code reviews in live streams, but generally I don't do them. So I can't give any specific feedback there. But in the courses, I always create my code. I always share my code snapshots so that you can compare your code to mine. So that is what I would recommend if you want to see how your code compares to mine. But yeah, so hopefully see you in future live streams. I wish you all the best. Great day, evening, morning, whatever it is for you. And bye-bye.